Okay, here I am. My name is Eleni Exarchou. For now, I'm the curator for Eros of Kosmos at the supermarket art fair in Stockholm, and I'm right here at the supermarket with Liz Miller Kovacs.
Is it too loud here with the sound?
No, I think we'll be fine.
Okay.
And I want to ask Liz, how did you get to the Art Institute? How did you learn about the school? And what made you to go to the school, and what medium?
So I found out about the school because when I was very young, a teenager, a young girl that I knew who I thought was very cool, I was hanging out with some aspiring artists, and she started studying at the Art Institute, so I visited her there. I think I was still in high school. And I decided to apply. And
So you were living in San Francisco?
In Santa Barbara.
Barbara.
I grew up in LA and then high school in Santa Barbara, or near Santa Barbara. So it's easy to drive up. I was driving already to drive to San Francisco.
So when you finished school, you enrolled immediately at the Art Institute?
I was in the Art Institute, in the painting department at first. Yeah.
And then did you
I finished painting, and then I went into. I got bored with painting, and I thought I was really interested in new genres, mediums, and performance and video art, and saw a lot of really interesting work coming from that department, and decided to go back into a master's. And I was hesitant to go to the same school. I kind of wanted to go to New York because it's New York and it's the place that people go. But unfortunately, being raised with a single mom and on student loans, I wanted to go to Columbia, and I wouldn't have even been able to pay the tuition out of my student loans. So I didn't know how I would survive working and studying and where I would get the money for my tuition. So I decided to stay in San Francisco but only if I could go in the new genres, to be part of the new genres department, because I saw a lot of good work, and it's a very reputable and hot department at that time. So.
Great. Yeah. So what kind of work were you doing in the beginning? Can you talk to us a little bit about your work, and what did you do like before or after you graduated, and how did you start it?
In my master's degree, or
afterwards? Or
in my master's degree, I was already exhibiting art in galleries and showing in Europe and stuff. So I was already doing new genre style work. I was doing. I did a series called Gold Fist about consumerism and greed and consumption, and sort of the idea of capitalism, the value of it over human life. And it was very surreal, a lot of gold and red and blood and fake blood. And I was performing in that as well and directing. I did a video trilogy and close-up photos of my mouth, the self-portraits, and just of my mouth stuffed with like gold jewelry and chains, but like really stuffed. And also had some sculptural installation with that work. And so that was how I started in new genres, and was doing a lot of photography at that time, but not traditional documentary photography. It was always like staged or planned, sort of more conceptual.
So it was always staged?
Yeah, I mean, sometimes, yes, always conceptual photography. I've moved more towards some documentary elements.
So, can you tell us a little bit about how you started working the way you are working right now? I know that you're traveling a lot. I know that you're going all over the world, to photograph special places, mines, and special places that you find. Do you want to talk about your travels a little bit? Because I really feel that this is, and it is a huge part of your work.
It is. I'm really happy to be doing this work. I find these places really fascinating and really important because, it's unfathomable how much of the Earth's surface has been mined or how much extraction is happening. I read just a few days ago that in the last 15 years, the amount of surface mining in the world has more than doubled in 15 years. So it's just expanding. And so I don't think people really think about it, and I didn't know about it. I didn't know about a lot of these places. I found out, I've always liked traveling and been a very adventurous traveler, but I never had previously figured out a way to combine my passion for travel and my passion for art. I was just always very curious and wanted to see the world as it really was rather than how it was portrayed in the media. So it's been very helpful, but it also is a bit isolating for me because I feel like most people, even very educated people, don't have the amount of experience and clarity because they haven't spent as much time in other cultures. But I started this project during the pandemic because I couldn't travel. I couldn't travel, and I wanted to see something. I wanted to explore. I wanted to go somewhere, and I was just looking for a place. And I also wanted to make art again, like decent art. I was kind of playing around with some silly projects, pandemic projects, but they weren't. I'd used to work with a crew and had a studio, and I wasn't comfortable with that during that time. I didn't really know. I just wanted to be very careful with that until we knew how things were. And did have family members who got very sick and one that passed. But I did find, I was looking on Instagram and I found a really interesting landscape, about a 90-minute drive from where I was, out in the Mojave Desert, and I had some fabric and some costumes, and I was staying with my partner, and I said, hey, let's go out into the desert and find this place on the map, and scout around. And so I went out, and it was very hot. It was like 9 degrees Fahrenheit. It was over 35, I'd say 35 or more Celsius. And I did this shoot, which was Amboy, it was the National Chloride Company's salt evaporation ponds or canals, and I did the shoot, and I was really happy with the results. Yeah, and it wasn't a very long shoot. We were a bit nervous because technically it was private property, even though there was no fence, and it was the first one, and I was only out there for a couple hours, but I did get one really good photo from it, and I already had a high resolution camera, so not as high resolution as I have now because my camera equipment is upgraded and technology is upgraded, but big enough to print large. And the pandemic was still going on, so I started researching online and using keywords and looking at satellite images also for things that look like irregularities in the landscape that didn't look natural, and zooming in and then researching that location and seeing internet searches, Instagram searches, maps, pictures and maps, and finding these places, and then eventually going out and scouting them and driving around and seeing if I could find access.
Right. So it grew like this.
It grew like that, yeah. Right. So the first 3 pieces were pandemic projects in California, and then I moved to Berlin.
Can you name a little bit some of the places you've been photographing? I know you were in Chile a while ago.
Yeah.
You've been in Greece, I know.
Yeah.
In certain places we have many mines.
Yeah. And I plan to go back to Greece soon. So.
And do you want to name some of the places you have been?
It started out that I would just go to places that were quite inexpensive and accessible, either a very cheap flight and cheap hotel off season, and something that would cost me the same as it would cost to stay in Berlin for the weekend and go out to restaurants or go out to anything. So this is what I started with, and then eventually I started selling some work and getting some funding, some grants, and so I was able to, and some invitations for residencies, so I'm now starting to go further afield. I've gotten a few, included in a couple photo festivals, some short lists, and a couple awards. So it's been good. So I've been able to expand. So first it was just Europe and California, Greece, Cyprus, Spain. Of course, it started in Germany, Czech Republic, or Czechia as it's called now, Italy. Last year I went to Svalbard in the Arctic. I had an artist residency there. And I also went to Chile, to the Atacama, to the lithium mines there. I hope to go back to South America later this year, but I've started also requesting and gaining official access to some of these places. So it's not all just snooping around and seeing if I can get in. So before it was all, it was just like these sort of guerrilla exploration, weekend activities, especially when in most places the mining stops, or some places they would just let me in and be nice and didn't care. I really thought as long as I didn't go, I was on the edge, or just where there's a view. And some places I got kicked out of course. But now it's about 50-50. I'm actually asking for access and getting it often. Yeah. And so in Chile I was invited in Svalbard I was invited in Italy, in Carrara, I got connected with an ex-quarryman who got me into one of the quarries on a Sunday. So officially the owners knew I was there, and often just showing people my project, or even offering them a print. Sometimes they don't want me mentioned because it's not really legal for them to have someone, nude in a costume, fabric costume, and their thing. But often they do like the work, and they allow it in. So that's how it's been going.
This is great. So do you want to tell us a little bit about your plans, or if you have any plans, or if you
I mean, sometimes it's very last minute.
We don't want to.
I went to Poland just last month. I'm making a book right now. I'm in the process of putting together a photo book.
Wow,
so
this is interesting.
I really needed to include Poland.
So the photo book is about the work in the mines.
It's all work from the mines. It's the first almost 4.5 to 5 years. So I really, because my mother was Hungarian, and the Hungarian side of my family were miners. My uncle and grandfather were miners.
I see.
They migrated, and migrants generally do labor jobs, so that's what they were doing in Ohio. So I was always kind of interested in mining and curious about their life. Even though I grew up in a different part of the country and different circumstances, but. So I still have to include, I'm going to go shoot in Hungary next month, and I went and shot in Poland because it's so close to Berlin and there's so much mining there. Yes. So I actually shot in an incredible granite quarry last month because I hadn't worked. I try to spread I'm trying to make show the scope and the sort of universal nature of the project through different continents and but also through the different materials. So I had, for instance, granite I didn't have. Last year I also went to Indonesia, and this was a self-funded trip, but yes, the air ticket was cost, it was under €1,000. It was between 700 euros or something round trip. But once we were in Indonesia, it was very cheap, and I went to the sulfur mines there, and also found some limestone mines there, which I hadn't photographed before, and so that was great to include Indonesia. I love Southeast Asia, so it was great just to be there and shooting. And sometimes I plan these trips 2 weeks in advance, and it's okay, we have a moment. I found a cheap flight, let's go. Or let's get on a train and go to Poland, or if it's close. So it depends. Sometimes I plan really far out. I really want to go to Australia and Africa, because I'm trying to sort of in the next couple of years. I feel like this project's going to be divided into phases. Yeah, well, I'm not going to wrap up. I'm in phase 1 of this project, which is showing the global scale of the project, and I really kind of want to start focusing more on regional, regional mining, and choose a few specific places to focus on. in the future to get more in depth. But before I can do that, I feel like I have to I think I need to do a little more in South America, and definitely I need to have
It's the book too, right, that you're making?
Well, the book is going to go out before I go to this book.
Yeah,
so the book I will just after Hungary. I just shot after Hungary. That's it. It's going to be. I'm aiming for July to do the photo book. I'm working with a designer already. But no, I mean this one's just going to be. It's 2020 to 2025. It's going to be the series, and there might be a future one. But until I can, and I think it's impossible to show the scope and scale of mining unless you include Australia, which has probably it's got all of its wealth from mining, pretty much. And, I think it's also important to understand that it's often indigenous land, and I'm trying not to be didactic in my project because some places are actually community spaces, and they're quite beautiful, and they're not. We need things for our lives, but in some places it's obvious. There's obviously like, if it's indigenous land, that I feel like the rules are or poor communities or rural communities. It's often these rules are not respected.
That's the point. Yeah.
And it's very exploitive. It's another form of colonialism. So, it's often only the very, very wealthy, billionaires that are really profiting off of this.
Right.
I think that it's important to think of all those things. There's also miners that are earning good livings, and they're actually able to, send their children to university or whatever they want to do. So it's it's not...
It's a cycle as always.
It's a cycle,
it's labor, and then...
in Chile, the miners lived really well. They live better than I do because they're working in the mines. They're making these sacrifices. They have tennis courts. They have soccer courts. They have good, healthy food. They have air conditioners and bathtubs. I don't have a bathtub, but they're making the sacrifice. They're working in the mine. They stay out there. They work in shifts of they stay out there. I think some people stay out there for 5 days and then go home for 2, or some people that live further away, they stay out there for 10 and then go home for a week, or
Right. Great.
So, it's interesting just to see how much our society depends on it and how much we're actually taking, and for people to know, because I think knowledge is power, and not to maybe, disposable items. Every single manufactured item contains extracted materials. So for me, that's really interesting. And it's also makes you just, think before you consume.
Yeah. So, thank you so much, Liz. It's been a really great pleasure to meet you here, and I'm so happy that this happened, and we had this show here at the supermarket art fair, and it brought us together here in Stockholm. So, do you want to say something else?
I think the biggest challenge to my work lately is some people don't believe it's real. They assume it's Photoshop. Yeah,
that was interesting. You told me about it.
Or they think it must be made with AI, and which I didn't have this experience when I started the project less than 5 years ago. In 2020, 5 years ago. But so, I think. I think it's important just to keep making it and actually witness things in real life and not let that hold you back, because
it's because technology makes us, feel that it's easy to do this in a computer. So
I think the most important thing is actually to it's really like a quest, we live in a sort of in an age when image overshadows reality, and we have been, and it's important to actually connect with the earth. And so this is part of my project, really connecting and seeing
this is the magic
things.
About your work, that it is real. It is you there.
And it's also the feminine perspective, which has obviously been left out of a lot of history with the landscape and industrialism and even mining sites, and in any kind of place like this. So.
And that you are giving us the images that we are not able to go there and see and think about what's going on, and this is the most important.
Yeah, I mean, it's often, not always, but often there's always a sense of risk, but I'm an adventurous person, and I try to do my research to make sure I can visit these places safely.
Yeah.
And I always travel with someone.
Yeah.
And I always do my research to make sure
Definitely.
that, see if it's a toxic site or not, because if it's toxic, I don't touch my skin to, of course, any water or anything like that. But some places are
there is.
So they have to be. There's always. I think if you're going to do this kind of work, it's really important to do your research. And if you don't
Always.
speak, and it's always good to speak with locals. And in some places, it's important. Like I speak, 3.5 languages, maybe 3 languages and 2 half languages, but it's important to at least be able to communicate in a local language. And if you can't, it's good to have somebody who can interpret for you.
Yes.
So.
Great. This is wonderful. Thank you. It was great being here with you and great listening about your work. And here we are. This was Liz Miller Kovacs. And we are saying goodbye from the Stockholm Supermarket Art Fair.